Today we are going to be discussing one of the worst terrorist attacks in U.S. history, also known as 9/11, and the economic effects coinciding with this tragedy. If all totaled to be When we really dissect the specific terrorist attack we all know as 9/11, a multitude of questions and a whirlwind of emotions begin to surface. When putting the emotional aspect aside, the economy also went through some pretty dramatic changes as well. When analyzing this horrific act of terror as a whole, it leaves a lot of the financially aware with one question: how was the Homeland Security affected economically after the traumatic events that occurred on September 11, 2001? After 9/11, the loss of equipment, cleanup, infrastructure, utilities, injuries, and the value of life all totaled to be $74.8 billion. And this wasn't just it. Post 9/11, our nation was forced to tighten our air security budget to a whopping $41.3 billion, raising the prices of flights significantly. From 2001 to 2014 alone, the domestic security totaled to $1.1 trillion due to the rise of terror. The attacks caused the Dow to drop over 600 points and the 2001 recession to grow. It has also had its hand in developing one of the biggest government spending programs in U.S. history, the War on Terror.
The second major effect of 9/11 was the War on Terror. The United States citizens felt a great strain because of the war. The War on Terror is said to be very elongated because it is not against any specific group's turf or is not against a specific country. It is against a way of people's living and is not easily changed or fought against. Here's an interview with one of our correspondent, Alyssa Booth.
How the War on Terror affected communities?
I think the War on Terror affected communities in a variety of ways. I think, from my experience, I actually think it brought communities closer together. It's ideal to think that in a neighborhood we know one another, we know our neighbors. I know my neighbors. I remember a candlelight vigil the day after. I also remember the kids in the neighborhood who probably didn't really fully understand quite what was going on, coming around and giving us flags to put in our cars and in our windows, things like that. I know that I struck up conversations with my neighbors whom I didn't really know that well before. I knew their names, I may have recognized their kids, but I didn't really know them, and I found myself having an opportunity to get to know them. I think that's what happened in my immediate neighborhood, and so I think in the community in a larger level, this community is really a bunch of neighborhoods getting together into a larger community and larger community. Driving to see my family over the next at least year, I saw a lot of the same kinds of things: flags in windows, flags in cars. So one of the positives is that I think it hopefully brought some communities together. With that said, I'm sure there are some negatives, but I'll stop because my video is getting long.
While the War on Terror brought communities closer together, there were obviously economic negative side effects.
The majority of U.S. citizens feel that the biggest national security threat to the United States is another terrorist attack. Most people associate terrorism and Islam together, so this caused a great prejudice in recent years against Islamic religion.
The War on Terror, as Mr. Kobos described, contributed to the severity of the U.S. debt crisis through the expenses of the war. Due to the amount of money spent on the War on Terror, there were reduced funds to lift the U.S. out of the 2008 financial crisis, and there were government shutdowns. As the debt crisis persisted, the dilemma of whether to raise the debt ceiling and help the economy, or cut the spending but then increase the amount of government layoffs, was a huge thing that the government was thinking about. Furthermore, as the debt to GDP ratio increased, debt holders wanted higher interest payments as compensation for the increasing risk that they will not be repaid. This demand for U.S. treasuries would slow the economy due to the increase in interest rates. What would an increase in interest rates do?
Increasing interest rates during an economic depression provides less of an incentive for people to take out loans, which then makes the banks less money.
It is this slow in the economy that directly affected the citizens of the U.S. and continue to do so via the contraction spiral. But what is a contraction spiral?
Employment goes down, so production goes down, and then because people are out of work, demand increases and employment goes down, continuing the spiral.
Did you think the War on Terror contributed to the 2008 stock market crash?
Yes, and the reason why I believe that is that right afterwards, the president said that one of the ways that we could defeat the people that we believed were the problem was to continue our way of life through purchasing things. Over the next few years, we spent more money than we made, on average over 103% of our income, and obviously that's not sustainable. So over the course of a few years, then the housing market crashed. Credit was originally lent to people that didn't deserve it, didn't have the qualifications for it, and as a result of it, once the housing market crashed, the stock market followed right behind.
Perfect.